The J. Michaels Show.
Morgan Fairchild is an actress who has appeared in everything from Happy Days to Mork and Mindy, Dallas, Falcon Crest, Pee-wee's Big Adventure, which is where I found out who she is, and North and South. Let's say hi to Morgan. Hi, Morgan. Hey.
Hi, Jay.
Hey.
You forgot Friends.
Oh, yeah. Friends. There's a whole list. We tried to get most of them.
Just for some of the younger crowd, they might know that one better.
And in Friends, what was your role?
I'm Chandler's mom. I'm Nora Bing, the bane of his life.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay, I remember now. I told you that my first, I never watched Falcon Crest or anything. I saw you on Pee-wee's Big Adventure, which is where I fell in love with you. I thought,
Thank you.
I know. I was like, wow, she's really wonderful. I knew who you were. I just had not seen anything you had been in. But you were great. Do you have any funny stories from the Pee-wee Adventure? Shooting that?
That was so much fun. Paul was a great friend of mine. Mm-hmm. And we first met, I was hosting Night at the Improv. They used to have a half-hour show called Night at the Improv. And so I was hosting it one time. And a lot of the comics were older, like Shaky Green and different ones. So in the afternoon, we had a rehearsal. Everybody came through and ran through their act and everything. And at the end, this young man steps up and says, I'm not going to run through my act. I just wanted to let you know, whatever happens tonight, I won't hurt you. I won't hurt you. So I'm like, oh, great. What's this guy going to do? And so that night, he comes out as Pee-wee Herman, right, which I had no clue. I had no clue. And he had a brown paper bag of spiders and snakes that he was throwing at me, plastic spiders and snakes. And, and we just improvised and had a great time. So after the show, he came over and grabbed me and he says, oh, you get me. You get me. People usually don't get me, and you get me. And we just became great friends, Yeah. And so we would hang out and everything. And so one afternoon, I've got a phone call on. This is when I still had my answering service, so they called and said, Miss Fairchild, we have Pee-wee Herman on the line. And so I got on. I said, Paul, I know your real name. You don't have to say it's Pee-wee Herman. Yeah. So anyway, he said, well, I got a big favor to ask. And I said, yeah. And he said, I'm doing my first movie. I said, oh. And he said, yeah, we have no money. It's on a shoestring budget. But we need some celebrity cameos, and everybody has turned us down. And I said, okay, well, first of all, don't tell people everybody's already turned you down. And he said, and we have no money. I said, I got the no money part. Shoestring budget, And I said, but when would you need me? He said, Thursday. And I said, okay, let me call. I was doing Falcon Crest at the time. And I said, let me call Falcon Crest and see. So I got up Falcon Crest. I show up on the back lot at Warner Brothers, which at that time, I don't know what they've done to it now, but back time, it was kind of a wilderness area where they could shoot Westerns and things like that. Sure. And so anyway, so we get back there and it's trees and they're doing the ninja fight. And so I took him and Tim Burton. It was Tim Burton's first movie. Took them and said, hey, guys, I have 4.5 years of Kung Fu in Chinatown. I can do this ninja fight for you, other than falling out of a tree, because if I break a leg, Falcon Crest is going to sue me. Right. So we do the ninja fight, and then Jim Brolin arrives in his Pee-wee outfit. Now, I had done the pilot of Hotel a couple of years before with Jim, so we knew each other. And so I said, what are we doing? He said, I have no clue. So they put us together and just said, just say, I know you are, but what am I? And, we're actors. We have no script. We have no sides. We have nothing. We said, what does it mean? And they said, it doesn't matter. It'll be really funny in context. We said, but we don't know what we're doing. They said, it's okay. It doesn't matter that you don't know what you're doing. Just do that and it'll be funny. And so we did that. And they said, oh, thank you very much. Goodbye. And, so I looked at Jim in his big Pee-wee costume. And I said, hey, do you have to go to work today? And he said, no, I got the whole day off. I said, yeah, me too. You want to do more? And he said, yeah, what can we do? I said, I don't know. Let's go talk to the guys. So we go over and get Pee-wee and Tim. And I said, hey, guys, you got us for the day. You want to do more? And so, they said, what else can we do? We borrowed the back lot here, but we don't have any other sets. And, what can we do? So Jim says, let me make a phone call. So he calls Aaron Spelling, and Aaron loaned us the Fairmont Hotel set. This is when Jim was doing a series called Hotel that I had done the pilot of. And then they weren't shooting on that set. So now we've got a set. We've got a lobby. We've got a Fairmont lobby. And what are we going to do? So Jim becomes a big game hunter, and I'm a spy, and Pee-wee becomes a bellhop, and it's paging Mr. Herman. Yeah. And all of that was just thrown together, improvised, because the idiot blonde said, hey, you want to do more? What can we do? So.
Wow, it's a wonderful movie, and you have such a cool role in it because you're playing his girlfriend, right? But
I'm the girlfriend. I'm the movie within a movie.
Yeah.
So I'm the glamorized version of Dottie. I'm the movie Dottie. So.
Right. Well, you are a prolific and talented person. You've done theater, TV, movies. You've written a book. What has been your favorite project so far?
Well, a lot of them, just so your audience knows, I just finished a book proposal last week that we're giving to the agent to start shopping a memoir. So maybe 2 books. We'll see. Mm-hmm. Anyway, you generally love whatever you're working on,
Right.
But my favorite series was one called Paper Dolls. It was my shortest lived, but my favorite. It was all about the fashion industry. We had a lot of hot fashion, a lot of rock and roll from the 80s. And, it was the most fun. Plus, I had a weird character, and they let me ad-lib a lot. And then they started writing to my weird sense of humor. So I loved that one. That one was great fun.
Well, what is your latest project you're working on now? But you're a book, right?
Yeah, I've been spending a lot of time on the book, working on this book proposal, hoping to get someone to buy the book. But I also have a little recurring thing on Bold and Beautiful I've been doing, and did a little movie at the beginning of the year that I'm not sure what the release date's going to be on. So just doing that and doing a lot of autograph shows. I'm going to the UK to do an autograph show in September, and doing a lot of that. So it's always great to get out and meet the fans and stuff. And I haven't really done one in Europe before, so this will be fun. I mean, I used to shoot in Europe a lot, Germany, France, Italy, all the different countries. God, I shot in Croatia, I shot in Bosnia during the war. So it'll be fun to be back over there and see people again.
Do you do Comic-Cons and things like that, where stars are there for autographs?
Well, that's what they are. That's what I'm going to do, is a European Comic-Con. I do Comic-Cons. I've done the Comic-Con in San Diego, and then I've done other Comic-Cons. And I do Chiller, a lot of the big shows and stuff. I'm not doing this year's Comic-Con but in San Diego, but I have done it in the past. They don't want you to come every year. People get bored with the same people every year.
Right. Do you enjoy doing that, meeting fans and signing autographs?
Oh, I do. We've also done, since you're based in Dallas, we've also done Dallas reunions. They've had them 2-3 years now, and I think they're going to have another one coming up in February in Dallas And it's always great because the cast gets together and we get to see each other, but also you get to meet fans. I mean, I can't believe it. People come in from all over the world. They come from Fiji, they come from Norway, they come from, the usual European countries, but Luxembourg and, and Asia, Australia, New Zealand. And so it's always great to see that the show I had a tiny part of, back in the day that just still has such legs. People still love that show so much. And also, it's always great to see Linda and Patrick and everybody.
Right.
And Larry before he passed. But, Larry was so great. Oh, and there's a Larry Hagman documentary coming out, too, that I participated in. And so did Barbara Eden. I got to see her there. And, and it's always great to see Barbara. And everyone has such fond memories of Larry. In fact, my sister. My sister and I have a podcast called Two Bitches from Texas. When you say, what have I been doing? That's one of the things I've been doing. Two Bitches from Texas. And we had Linda and Patrick on, and Donna Mills, a lot of my old friends. And Patrick, just was telling such a moving story about, he and Larry and Linda were just joined at the hip. They were great friends. I've done a lot of PR with everybody over the years, and Larry and I Willie Nelson would ask us to MC different charity events. So Larry and I would MC things. And, I did a lot of personal appearances with Larry, so I got to know him pretty well, but obviously not nearly as well as those two did. And just joined at the hip for so many years. And Patrick tells a really moving and wonderful story about, sitting at Larry's bedside and holding his hand when he was passing, and talking about their remarkable friendship. I think it's one of our most popular clips and episodes of the Two Bitches from Texas podcast of it's very moving, that friendship that lasted for so many years.
Yeah, I watch your podcast. I love it. Of course, I interviewed Catherine. She lives up the road here. She's kind of...
Yeah, I know.
I know, she's not far. But I love the one that you did with the people from Love Boat. You were talking about that. Yeah, that was a great episode.
Thank you. They're very funny. I had a great time with them when I was shooting Love Boat back in the day, because I had never done Love Boat. It was such a popular show, but just the timing never worked out. And then one year on hiatus, they were going to sail from Australia to Fiji, and usually they shot just on the lot. Forgive me with my allergies here.
Okay.
So usually they would shoot on the lot, but maybe once or twice a year they would do a real cruise. And they started off doing the Caribbean, and then they were cruising up and down Mexico. And I remember it was a big deal when they were going to go to Alaska. Well, this was the first one they were going to do off the continental United States. So we're doing Love Boat, sailing from Australia to Fiji. So I thought, well, they offer me this every year. I said, when am I ever going to go see Australia and Fiji?
Right.
And so I said, sure, So everybody told me, you've got to lose 10 pounds before you go, because they've got these gorgeous Italian waiters. They ply you with food all the time. The food is fabulous. And so you've got to, lose weight before you go. So I'm like trying to get skinny. And anyway, so we get to Australia. We're shooting in Australia. Wonderful country, warm, wonderful people. We go to get on the boat, and this was a boat that they had just bought. And it was not the white cruiser you're used to seeing. It was a big gray tanker-looking thing.
Wow.
So we're all like, oh, where's the cruise ship? No, that's it. Really?
We're getting on a warship.
Yeah. So anyway, so we get on the ship, and we all come down to dinner. I had a great cast that I was working with. We had Linda Evans from Dynasty, Jim Neighbors, who was a dear friend of mine, Jessica Walter, who had her daughter with her. A ton of Beth Howland, who was on Moonlighting at the time, and Grant Goodeve, who was on Eight is Enough, who was playing my love interest, who was just a doll, and Lloyd Bridges, legendary Lloyd Bridges, who I did a series with later. Anyway, so we had a really great cast. Well, we come down to dinner that first night, and everybody's all excited because the food, everything. Yeah. So Jim Neighbors is looking at the menu, and he says, my God, they got something called Saratoga potatoes. I have never had Saratoga potatoes, so I'm going to order the Saratoga potatoes. So when those arrived, they were Ruffles potato chips.
All right.
And Jessica Walter ordered an appetizer of ravioli, and it arrived. It was Chef Boyardee.
Yeah.
Everything, I think, was canned, or it was not the food. It was not this elaborate food buffet that we'd been led to believe. Also, what they hadn't told us is that the Tasman seas are some of the roughest in the world.
Oh, wow.
So once we start off on our little voyage over to Fiji, I mean, it was, I'm the only one who didn't get seasick. I mean, we're all getting up at 5 a.m., getting into makeup, and trying to look glamorous while people are throwing up over the side of the boat.
Oh, gosh.
I'm the only one who didn't get seasick. I have no clue why. And so it was not the glamour voyage that everybody thought. I remember at one point we were waiting to do something. I think I said to Linda Evans, man, if I'd saved up my whole life for this vacation, I think I'd be pretty mad if I were one of the real passengers. At least they're paying us to be here. But it was a rocky voyage. And then we got to Fiji, and we're shooting a scene, and I'm in my little hot pants, and we're shooting a scene, and it's pouring rain. And Grant Goodeve and I are shooting this thing, and I'm literally, we can't even move me around. I can't walk around in the scene because I am ankle deep in mud. I am stuck in mud. And all of a sudden we hear, and I said, guys, I think that's the thing they blow when the ship is leaving. And they said, oh, no, the ship can't be leaving. They wouldn't leave us. And they left us.
Oh, my goodness.
Ankle deep in mud. So fortunately, we had some people with us, local, who knew where we were going next. So we get into the Jeep and we try to drive to the next town to meet the ship. But it was like one of those things where you're thinking, oh, my God, I'm sitting here in the jungle, ankle deep in mud. I'm going to die here and nobody will notice. But we had a lot of fun. But then I love this story that Fred was telling about blowing everybody up, if you saw that one. Fred Grandy was telling a story about how the show was such a huge hit, Love Boat was such a huge international hit. And they were like in Monaco or someplace in Europe, and they'd been doing a big event and balloons and everything. So they take some balloons and they think, okay, we put in our time here. Let's go back to the ship and we'll have our little party. So they get in this cab, and people still smoked back then. Anyway, they get in this cab, and Fred lights a cigarette and he blows up the cab. Because the balloons over there don't have helium, they have hydrogen.
Oh my goodness.
And he almost blows up the whole thing. And there was somebody standing, the window of the cab was rolled down. Somebody standing outside there like got blown and burned. And it was a big mess. They all got burned. And Fred had to be airlifted to some emergency hospital. He tells it it's very funny. It sounds scary, and it was scary, I'm sure. But when he tells it, it's very funny.
Funny when you tell it.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah. So, throughout your career, you've always kind of been given roles where you're very pretty. You were talking about your hot pants. They always put you in a role where you're the beautiful. Have you ever thought that you wanted a role that wasn't considered important, that it was just your talent?
Always. And you're always looking for things that have nothing to do with what you look like. I wanted to be a doctor or a paleontologist when I was a kid. I would love to play a doctor or a paleontologist. I was really hoping for Jurassic Park. Because of my interest in paleontology, Michael Crichton, who wrote Jurassic Park, we were the go-to people for the Museum of Natural History in the 80s, talking about paleontology. In fact, I actually did a commercial for their traveling show. They were very proud to have a traveling, moving dinosaur show back in the 80s. And it was the first time they'd put one out instead of taking one from the Smithsonian. So for the commercial that would travel with the show to each city, I did a commercial with a giant Allosaurus behind me, which looks like a Tyrannosaurus, slightly smaller Tyrannosaurus. And I mean, traffic stopped on the 405 here when they were transporting that Allosaurus to my commercial shoot.
Oh, wow.
But it was great. So I would have loved to have done Jurassic Park. I'd have loved to have done any of those movies.
Did you audition for Jurassic Park?
Oh, no, they didn't even consider me for that. But Crichton and I were friends. I really liked him a lot. Very smart, wonderful guy. And we worked a lot on paleontology things for the museum and everything. But I also wanted to be a doctor. One of my weird hobbies is emerging viruses and epidemiology. That's how I ended up working with Dr. Fauci all through the 80s on AIDS. I spent a lot of time on my social media now trying to educate people about the long-term repercussions of COVID and why you shouldn't keep catching it. And a mask is not a terrible thing to wear. And so I'd love to be cast as a doctor or a researcher or something. And no. And then our uncle was a judge and won an anti-censorship case before the Supreme Court in his 1969. And then his son, our cousin, was a lead prosecutor for the Justice Department for many years. So grew up around that. I would love to play a lawyer, play a judge, play any of these other things. They just don't usually think of me that way.
Right.
But whenever I'm offered anything, I grab it, anything offbeat. I love doing some things people don't expect to see you. And like Pee-wee's Big Adventure, even though it's not medicine or anything, it was still people don't expect to see you. Or like when the Roseanne people called and they wanted me to play a lipstick lesbian. And they sent me the script, and it was to play Sandra Bernhardt's new girlfriend. So the whole episode, everybody's talking about, Sandra keeps talking about her hot new girlfriend. And at the end, she opens the door, and there's the hot new girlfriend. And I knew everybody in the world would not expect it to be Morgan Fairchild, especially at that point in time. And so, again, I like to do things people aren't expecting you to do. And iconoclastic, groundbreaking kind of thing. So whenever something's offered to me that is different, is offbeat, especially if I'm scared of it, I always think you should accept the ones you're scared of, right? Because that's how you actually grow and make some progress as a person and also as an artist.
Has anyone ever assumed that you were a lesbian because you did that role?
A couple of people asked back then, but I'm so notorious for being a guy's lady, a guy's woman, and I'd already been with my fiance for several years at that point, so I don't. Anybody who knew me knew I wasn't. Yeah. But I'm very supportive of the gay and lesbian community, and Catherine and I grew up in the theater, and. From when I was 10. So by the time I hit puberty, all my friends were he, she, or other. And, so this was just always part of our universe, was people who might have a different approach to sex and other things than you might have.
Yeah. You and Catherine, do you get along really well? Have you always gotten along well?
If you've seen our podcast, you must know we get along really well.
Well, yeah. Yeah, but has it always been that way?
Yeah. We're only a year and a half apart. I'm a year and a half older, and so I was always the sickly one, and I felt protective of her. But she was the tomboy who could beat up people who were picking on me because I was the sickly one. So we always had each other's backs. Yeah,
she was in not the Legend of Boggy Creek. It was the other one. There was a Bigfoot movie, and I watched it the other day. She played the restaurant waitress in it. Great little role, and I enjoyed seeing her in it. Especially now that I've met her and talked to her and interviewed her. It was really
She's very cool. Talented. She's very talented, and she's a wonderful teacher. And for your audience who may not know, my sister's name is Catherine Hart, and she has an acting school in Dallas called Heart and Soul, HARTT and Soul. And she's a wonderful teacher. She's the one with the Juilliard degree, and she's really a wonderful teacher. I talked to her about what she's teaching in class. I've observed some of it. I always hear about it and how her students are progressing and everything. And she's amazing. She really changes people's lives. We talk every Sunday. We have a Sunday conversation. We talk every Sunday, and so we were talking about some of the progress some of her students have been making on just breakthroughs. And not all of them want to be actors. A lot of them just want to learn how to deal with things better. Sometimes people want to know, like lawyers want to know how to present to a jury better, or somebody may just want to know how to find their center, or just figuring out life. There's or selling on home shopping, but it's a lot of different kinds of people come to her for different things, and I'm just amazed at her. She's very good with autistic kids, and I've followed her work with a couple of her autistic students for years.
Whose idea was it to do a podcast?
Mine.
Yours. Okay.
Yeah. Well, you try to stay current with the times. That's always one thing about our industry. You try to stay current with the times, and everything's been moving to the internet and to podcast. And especially during COVID, when everything was shut down and really wasn't anything shooting. I started thinking, what could we do together? Because we grew up in the theater together.
Right.
I started thinking, what could we do together? And I thought, everybody's doing podcasts. We should do a podcast together and just make it like our Sunday evening chat, because we'd talk for hours, about everything, about the world, about relationships, about, our childhood, about all kinds of stuff. And so we thought about it. And then, of course, once you decide you're going to do one, then you have to come up with a name for one, and everything.
That was my next question. Who named it?
Me.
You did.
Well, we're sitting around with our producer trying to come up with a good name. And, of course, everything sounds too boring or bland or too cutesy or whatever. And finally I said, it's really just two bitches from Texas sitting around talking. And I said, I think that could be it, two bitches from Texas. And as soon as we heard it, everybody said, yeah, I like that. So that's how we came about.
Yeah, that was a cool name. And it really fits just your personalities. It works very well that you do this.
Jay, are you saying we're bitches?
No, I'm saying that I like to think of both of you as good buddies, but just that.
That's what we're considering it to be.
Yeah.
And, and we're everywhere. I'm sure yours is, like YouTube, Spotify, all the different places, wherever you get podcasts, you can get it. But we've been having so much fun doing it. And, of course, I'm calling in all my old friendships. And Catherine's got a couple of her students that have gone on and done great things. And so we've got some younger, some older. We've got John Edward the Psychic. We've got a couple of my friends, Tom Nichols, who writes for The Atlantic, is a Russia specialist, and Norm Ornstein from the American Enterprise Institute, who's an old friend of mine, who's the foremost expert on Congress in America. And George Conway, who was just running for Congress in New York, who was running for Congress when we did his interview, and Donna Mills and the Love Boat people, and it's quite across the board.
Do you like doing shows where you talk politics? Do you enjoy that?
Well, yes, I do. I think it's important, especially these days, to try to talk about things in a friendly and sane and down-to-earth way, have a good exchange of ideas. For instance, George was always a Republican, and as I'm sure much more conservative than I am, but I have appreciated the stand he's taken on some of our rights being eroded and stuff. So I like to talk about that. Tom Nichols, when we talk to Tom is also, he's a Reagan Republican and taught Russia stuff at the Naval War College for decades, and writes for The Atlantic, mostly on that kind of thing. But I wanted to talk to him about one of his theories, because he wrote a book a few years ago, or a big article on the Lost Boys. He started writing it about how cults recruit young men. These young men who seem to be having a hard time finding themselves. And at the time he wrote it, it was about ISIS recruiting young men who need a place to feel at home and safe and part of something. And but now we've started talking about also with some of the domestic groups that recruit young men on the same, but it's the same principle of finding young men who are vulnerable and feeling adrift and recruiting them into whatever the issue is. And so it's kind of evergreen, even though it was originally about ISIS. And then I wanted him to talk about his cat, because I know that he has a cat that he felt saved his life. And I'm an animal lover, and a lot of my followers on social media are animal lovers. So I always love it when people have stories about their animals. And so it's like that, it's kind of, I like the feedback on that, because when we finished shooting it, Tom says, boy, that was really fun. And Tom never says anything is fun. He's a curmudgeon. He's a curmudgeon kind of guy. And then I got so much nice feedback from people who said, I've seen him on TV, I've read his articles. I didn't realize what a nice, down-to-earth guy he was, and that he loves his cat so much. So, it kind of works both ways. We try to help educate our audience on issues on that kind of show, not on the Love Boat show, not on Donna Mills' show, but but on some of it. Norm Ornstein, who does a lot of television too, was talking about expanding the Supreme Court. Yeah. What the process would be to expand the Supreme Court. And what I knew and the back of my mind, but had kind of forgotten, is that you could also expand Congress.
Yes.
There's nothing written in the law that Congress has to be the size it is. In fact, it hasn't been expanded in many decades. And the population has gotten a lot bigger. You could make a very good legal case for expanding the number of people in Congress. So, these are kind of things that I find interesting, and I'm hoping our audience finds interesting. And we got a lot of feedback of, my God, I had no idea. I didn't know that. So we're always trying to have fun, but also educate people. And our main thought was to make it like you're sitting around with your family and friends at the kitchen table, just gabbing and learning and exchanging and learning from each other and having a good exchange of ideas where nobody's screaming and nobody's calling names.
No arguments.
And it's, just exchange of ideas. Mm-hmm. And so, and that everybody feels safe and it's cozy and it's fun and it's interesting. And sometimes silly, sometimes serious, but it's, it's warm.
Right.
It's warm.
Yeah.
And it's kind. And, on my social media, I always sign off with #BeKind because I think, and that's one of the things Catherine and I really wanted to push with our podcast is to be kind. There's so much kindness lacking in our society now. And I don't know what happened to that. It seemed to be different when I was growing up. Neighbors helped each other. Neighbors cared about each other, whether you agreed on everything or not. Mm-hmm. It's the way I was raised as a Texan, as a Dallasite. And I've carried that out here to Hollywood all these years, to New York first and now to Hollywood, is to be kind to each other.
Well, I believe that push come to shove, most people are very kind and would go out of their way to help you if they can, And so, but online, through social media, we see ourselves as being very, very separated, and that's going on. So it's a reality versus what's online, to me.
Well, that's one thing we wanted to start broaching. Mm-hmm. And to heal that breach. Yeah. It doesn't mean that anybody gets converted to believe the other person's point of view. Right. But it does mean we have a nice discussion and we share. For instance, Fred Grandy, who's hysterical, and I did Love Boat with, and he was a Republican congressman. And, we don't touch on politics too much, and mainly because he didn't want to, which I perfectly respect. And some people don't want to talk politics, and that's fine. Some people do want to talk politics, and that's fine. But it's always with respect. It's always with kindness, with respect, with listening to the other person's point of view, because I think that's another thing that's missing in society a lot now is listening to each other. Right. If you believe this, this, and this, why do you believe that? Let me hear what your ideas are and how you came to that opinion. And I've always been that way. I always like to hear other people's opinions. I'm a very quiet person generally. I was always a very shy kid. I always listen. I listen a lot. Yeah. And that's really how you learn, is by listening, not by talking. Right.
It's, so many people can't, speak without making it toxic. It's a battle with you. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, I don't believe in I'm so Aquarian, I don't believe in battling. I believe in reaching out. Right. I believe that all of us are put here to help each other get through this thing called life. Right. That nobody ever knows what that other person is going through or has been through, what kind of depression, what kind of day they had, what kind of whatever, that we're all here to help. Mm-hmm. To help, Mr. Rogers said, if there's an emergency, look around for the helpers. Right. Well, we should all be the helpers, every day, whether it's letting somebody go ahead of you in the line at the grocery when they only have 2 items, or, letting somebody else take that parking space that you were aiming for without getting mad about it, or letting somebody in traffic, even if they give you the finger, it's being a helper. It's
Yeah.
being kind and being a helper for your fellow man. You know, Catherine and I had a mentor at Theater 3 when we were growing up, Larry O'Dwyer, and he would always say that acting is reaching out in love to your fellow man.
Right.
And that's how I've approached acting, but just inside me, that's also how I've approached life. Is we are here to help each other. Catherine and one of her neighbors have started doing a game night, and she knows I'm not a game person. I'm a lousy game person. And she was telling her neighbor who wanted me to next time I'm in town. Oh, I'm going to be in town to do the Farrah Fawcett Foundation thing on September 24th. They have a big fundraiser, the Farrah Fawcett Foundation, on September 24th. So I'll be there for that. Anyway, so they were saying, you know, Morgan's a little. So Catherine is, you know, the neighbor kept saying, oh, you know, no, Morgan should play the games. And Catherine said, no, you don't want Morgan to play the games. And she always likes to tell the story that when we play Monopoly when we were little kids, and I'd be winning, and I'd say, oh, you landed on my hotel. You don't have to pay me. It's okay. You don't have any money. You know, and it's like, oh, I own all the hotels now. You know, I'll give a room to everybody. You know, it's like, Catherine, that's me, you know. And Catherine said, you're lousy to play with because you're not competitive, you know. And Catherine's very competitive when she gets into card games or anything. You know, she's very competitive. And I just don't have that gene, so I'm not fun for her to play games with.
Yeah, I was just thinking, you know, you earlier you mentioned pets, or you mentioned that you love animals, and Catherine's two poodles, Harper and Scout. I live vicariously through going to the lake with, you know, she has videos on Instagram of her two poodles, and it's almost like they're my own dogs. I love them, you know.
Well, you know, if I'm in town, I'm out there at the lake with them, you know, so I can't, I've had 2 hip replacements, so I can't always walk as far, depending on if I'm having a good day or not, as they do. So sometimes I'm waiting for them to come back as opposed to going all the way down. But yeah, I mean, she loves those dogs, and those dogs are just, you know, wonderful companions. And she really goes out of her way to make sure that they're walked in and take them to the lake all the time. She loves the lake, and I love the lake. And it's Texoma, Lake Texoma, for those of you who are listening. And so, you know, when I'm in town, we take them up. But she takes them up all the time, just by herself. It's a long drive, but she goes.
Well, she used to live on that lake, right? She had a house there?
She didn't live there. She had a lake house, so she would go up for the weekends and stuff. But she ended up selling. She had a boat, too, but she ended up selling both of them. And, you know, just it got to be a lot of upkeep and everything. So now she just goes up to the lake. And it's so nice. The people she sold her house to that she really loved for 25 years are so nice. And they told her, if you and Morgan come up, you know, just come out on the deck and have lunch on the deck, you know, even if we're not there and all that. And they've invited her, like she has a golf cart that she left for them. And we always used to do the 4th of July golf cart thing at her lake at the marina, where she would dress the poodles in tutus. And oh, the poodles would be so mortified. They're both boys. and we would have a fun time, and they said, oh, come use the golf cart, you know, go be in the golf cart parade. They're so kind. So that has worked out really well. And sometimes they go for walks with her when she goes up there. If they're up at the lake, they go for walks with her with the dogs, Harper and Scout. Well,
you often have something, because you're a celebrity, that you do these things. We mentioned Comic-Cons earlier. There are also these Christmas Comic-Con type things. Do you do those? Because you've been in Christmas movies, right?
We have not been invited to do any of the Christmas specialty autograph shows. Yeah. I would like to, because I have done some Christmas movies and stuff, but I would like to. In fact, we did one for Lifetime a couple of years ago with Linda Gray, Donna Mills, Lonnie Anderson, and Nicolette Sheridan and me, called Ladies of the 80s, A Divas Christmas. And we had so much fun on that. We were really hoping we'd get a sequel to it. We had so much fun on that. And it was so great to just see everybody and catch up. And because Linda's moved to Palm Springs now, and, you know, Donna has a child she was raising, and everybody, you know, you don't see each other as much as you used to. And so I was sitting on the set one day, and I looked over at Linda and Donna, and I said, back in the old days when we were sitting on sets, we'd say, "Oh, who are you wearing? Who are you dating? Where are you go? Which restaurant are you going to?" And it's like, how are the grandkids? How's the hip replacement?
Yeah. What you talk about different now.
Yeah, but we had so much fun. We really were hoping they'd do another one, but no, I haven't done a Christmas Comic-Con. I'd love to.
That would be so nice. How has the TV, film, and movie industry changed since, say, the 70s or 80s?
Oh, my God. Completely. It's completely changed. Right now, L.A. is just dry as a bone. I mean, there is almost nothing shooting here. I never thought I would see it, and everyone is saying the same thing. I never thought that I would see Hollywood leave L.A. It's moved to other states, moved to Canada, moved to Europe. There's just almost nothing shooting here. In fact, I just did a telethon for Project Angel Food, which delivers food to shut-ins and people who are ill. And Noah Wiley was doing the same telethon, and we were chatting on the red carpet, and I said, "Thank you for keeping the pit here, because it's like the only game in town." And he said, "I know." He said, "We're a real unicorn. We're a unicorn in LA now."
Yeah.
But that's how much it's changed. But it's also sad to me, because when I first got out here, like I talked about shooting Pee-wee's Big Adventure on the Warner Brothers backlot.
Mm-hmm.
I shot one of my first miniseries. I shot, I shot one with Natalie Wood and Roddy McDowell, which was about the sinking of the Titanic. So that was period costumes. And then I shot one that was a Harold Robbins book. Harold Robbins, for your younger audience, was a major bookseller back in the 60s, 70s, 80s. And he had written a trilogy about Hollywood. The first one is called The Dream Merchants, and that's 1912 to 28. Then he wrote the Carpetbaggers, which they made into a big movie in the 60s, from 28 through the 30s and 40s. And then one was called The Survivors, which was the 50s and 60s, which they tried to make a series out of, actually, in the late 60s. Anyway, so I did a miniseries of the Dream Merchants in 1912 to 28. Mm-hmm. And, for every lady out there, the wardrobe. I mean, we were all so excited because back then they had, like, Warner Brothers, all the studio lots had their own wardrobe department. So you'd get something, that Edith had to design if you were at Universal. So we're shooting at Warner Brothers. We're pulling out these costumes, and the guys are like looking, who was it made for? Gary Cooper. Oh, it was, who was it made for? Jimmy Stewart, and I'm wearing all these costumes, starting with the big brimmed hats and everything embroidered in lace from 1912 through, I'm doing a Charleston on a baby grand piano and a chemise, for the Charleston, late 20s period. And I mean, those costumes, the embroidery, the work on those, the lace, the embroidery was so gorgeous. And I know when I was doing the Charleston, they brought me this dress, and it looks like nothing on the hanger. It's just silk mousseline, which is very fine, thin silk. I mean, you blow on it, and this whole dress goes,
wow.
And so very fine, thin silk. And but it's an ombre, meaning it starts like an ice blue at the top, at the little strap, just very simple chemise. And as it goes down, ice blue into darker and darker royal blue, and into almost midnight blue at the bottom. Right. And I'm doing this Charleston. I mean, every time you would move, that whole dress would just go. It was like one of the sexiest dresses I've ever seen. It looks like nothing on the hanger, except that it's beautiful silk. It just looks like a big sheaf of beautiful silk. Right. But and the costumes are just so wonderful. That's one of the sad things, is most of the studios have sold off all their wardrobe departments and prop departments, and probably sold off the back lot to build something on it. And, for those of us who got here in time to still see a vestige of old Hollywood that we grew up on, it's disappointing. I mean, young people starting out now don't have the fun that we had and the discovery that we had. I mean, even when I was shooting Friends, I got to my first day on the set of Friends and realized that we're shooting on the same soundstage where I did Flamingo Road like 40 years before, or at that time, 30 years before. And so, just it's just everything is a big circle. I mean, everybody, you stay here long enough, everybody knows each other. I was so fortunate to get to work with people like Natalie Wood, who was so kind to me, and Roddy McDowell, and and Barbara Eden and Angie Dickinson, all the nicest ladies. Angela Lansbury. I mean, I'd known Angela because we worked on a lot of different issues together, on committees and stuff, but when I shot Murder, She Wrote, she was so kind. She had, come sit in my trailer with me, let's talk, and just so nice and fun and down to earth and great storytellers. Roddy McDowell was famous for having these dinners, like salon kind of dinners. Mm-hmm. And so you never knew who was going to be there. It was always a big secret. And he would always have the most interesting, eclectic groups of people. So, that's where I'd done a pilot with Vincent Price and his wife, Coral Brown. But I really got to be good friends with them at dinners at Roddy's. And the Joan Rivers would be there, and just all kinds of different. You never knew who you were going to run to. One time, I was hanging up my coat in the foyer, and I hear this voice saying, "I heard Morgan Fairchild's going to be here. I love all her AIDS work. I want to meet Morgan Fairchild." And Lauren Bacall comes around the corner. I mean, Lauren Bacall wanted to meet me. Wow. I was like, it was fun. But one time, I was at Chasen's. There used to be a really famous restaurant here called Chasen's. And everybody went there, and they had events there. And it was a famous, for decades. Mm-hmm. It's a grocery store now. It's a Bristol Farms grocery store where that building used to be. But anyway, everybody used to go there. Elizabeth Taylor was famous for, ordering their chili to be sent to whatever part of the world she was shooting in. Anyway, so I'm having dinner at Chasen's one night. And I had worked with Robert Wagner when I first got out, and I'd worked with Natalie. Anyway, Robert comes over to my table and says, "Morgan, we're having dinner with a friend, and he's a big fan of yours. Would you come over and say hi?" And I'm like, "Sure." So I go over. My God, it's Fred Astaire.
Oh, wow.
It's Fred Astaire wanted to meet me. All the nights I sat in retrospective music theaters, old movie theaters in New York and watched Fred and Ginger movies. I mean, I love Fred Astaire. I just could have died. Could have died.
That is one of the things that I love about you is you are so approachable. I mean, it's so easy to talk to you. Just say hi.
Oh, well, thanks.
And to ask you to do something like this show. It was wonderful. So I want to ask you one last time, or one thing. Overall, is there any one project you worked on that you really loved the most?
Well, oh God, Jay, there have been so many. I've been doing this since I was 10, and I'm old now.
Yeah.
I've been doing it forever. Like I said, my favorite series I worked on was Paper Dolls, because of the writing, and just we had so much fun doing, because they let me ad-lib all. I always play bad guys, but I always ad-lib and add a lot of comedy to it, and that's why people remember the bad guys. It's the bad guy you love to hate. And Larry did the same thing on Dallas. He made him funny. You were waiting to see what he was going to say. So I love doing that. I did a big tour of Gentlemen Prefer Blondes back in the 80s. I loved that. Yeah. Did a big national tour of The Graduate about 20 years ago. Loved that. We went all over the place. And so that was, it's like we're doing this tour of The Graduate, and we played everywhere, from Orlando, Fort Myers, Fayetteville, Arkansas. We worked our way we played Vegas, we worked our way up the West Coast, we did Portland and Seattle and Vancouver, and then we go over. Are you running out of time?
Yeah, did you use that song from The Graduate?
Well, no, we don't use, they may have played it. I don't sing it, it's not a musical, but they may have played it as an intro. Yeah, Mrs. Robinson. Yeah. But anyway, so we get to Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, and it is winter, and it is icy, and I'm thinking, who the hell in Canada is going to come out, to see our show in the ice? And we had huge audiences, and they were so sweet and said, "Thank you for coming," because people always cancel because, it's so far and it's icy and everything. Anyway, so we come in one night after we've opened, and I'm checking in at the stage door. We have to check in for security. And I see the bulletin board, and it's got our review up there on the bulletin board. And then I see James Brown is playing tonight. and over at the Coliseum. And I'm like, oh God, I wish I could go see James. James is an old friend. And so anyway, I'm checking in. I say, oh, where's Bob tonight that usually checks us in? Oh, Bob is working the James Brown concert. I said, do you have his cell phone? And so they said, yes. Can you get Bob on the phone? So we get Bob on the phone. I said, Bob, can you go get James' road manager and let me talk to him? So she gets the road manager, comes over and says, hey, we are over here. And we started at 7:30 instead of 8 because it gets dark so early here. We're going to come down early, get finished early. And I want to bring my cast over to catch the end of James' show. So can we do that? And he says, oh, yeah, I'll meet you at the stage door. So we finish our show. I paddle everybody into a couple of cabs. We go over to the other theater where James is playing. We get there, and the road manager meets us at the door, and it's one of these big open auditoriums. Everybody's dancing, everybody's standing around. James is up on the stage. The guy signals to James that I've got Morgan here, and the band starts vamping. They're just vamping and vamping and vamping, and the stage manager says, James wants you to come up and dance with him on stage. And I'm like, I'm going to go dance with James Brown on stage. I'm not an idiot, I've been a fan of James since I was a kid, Anyway, and so we're wending our way through the thing. I've got my cast behind me. We're kind of cutting through the crowd. We get up to the foot of the stage, and James is saying, come up, come up, come up. I'm saying, no. And my cast is saying, go up, go up. And I'm saying, they're vamping. They won't go on. And James, so finally I go up, and I'm like some fan somewhere. I have this picture taken from a distance of me dancing with James Brown.
Wow.
And I told my sister later, I said, I can die happy knowing I danced with James Brown. Anyway, so we were old friends. So we got up, and then we're walking backstage. And that's when he told me my cast was kind of behind me, and James was just talking to me and told me that he had cancer and everything, and that he didn't know how long he had, that he had cancer. Knowing that, he then entertained my cast backstage, signing autographs and just talking about everything for 45 minutes. My cast who didn't know that he had cancer. I don't know the PCP stories. I know the guy who was always really great to me. So.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you prefer film or TV in front of a camera, or the theater, being on a stage?
Jay, they're so different. They're so different. With stage, the great thing is you get immediate feedback. I mean, if you bombed or not, especially if it's a comedy, man, if you bombed. So there's that immediate kind of thing. And it's also a very different focus of energy. If you're doing stage, you kind of conserve energy all day until curtain goes up, and then it's 3 hours of, push it to the back of the theater, just huge energy drain. If you're doing film, it only matters when the camera's running. Right. This is one of the things I tell young people when they're starting on stuff, and they're giving everything in rehearsal. I said, don't give everything in rehearsal. You cry now, you can't cry later.
Yeah.
Just mark it until they really say action, till you're really shooting, because that's all that matters. You may have waited 18 hours in a storm before they call you to the set, but those moments when you are on the set, nobody cares how cold you are, how tired you are, how messed up your makeup is. They don't care. All that matters is what's on that frame right then. So it's a very different photo. You can be like, for 12, 18 hours waiting to shoot. But when you get there, boom, that's when the energy's got to go. So that's they're very different. The rewards are very different. The pacing is very different. The energy conservation is very different. But I love both. I mean, I grew up doing theater, and I love doing films too.
Any advice for someone who wants to become an actress?
Don't. Well, I tell you what. When I was 16, I was working on Bonnie and Clyde.
Right.
And I asked our mentor, Larry O'Dwyer, that big thing. Do you think I could do this for a living?
Yeah.
And he gave me the best advice I've ever given anybody. If there is anything else in life you can do and be happy, do that.
Wow. Because
it's a very hard life. It's a life full of rejection. Most people can't deal with the rejection, the amount of rejection you get as an actor. And you have to develop a tough skin. You have to learn not to take it personally, or it'll eat you up alive. But it's a very tough life, especially for women. It's especially for women, if I may say so. But if it's all you love, then go for it. I just feel bad for kids right now starting out because everything has changed during COVID. It used to be that you would go in for an audition and you'd read. And, when I first got to LA, I would go in and audition all the time. Even if you didn't get the part, the casting people and the producers and the directors, they got to see you. They'd chat with you in the room. They got a feeling of who you were. They could say, oh, that was almost it. Can you do it a little more that way? And give you a chance to tweak. Mm-hmm. But now everything is these, just online auditions where people self-tape. And there's no chance to talk to anybody. There's no chance to hear, could you make it a little darker there? Or, there's no tweaking. You're just guessing. And there's not as much production. They're not really doing TV movies anymore, or big miniseries much. And there's a lot of stuff on cable, on streaming, but not a lot of it shoots here.
Right.
So I think it's a lot harder for people to get a foot in the door now. Also, you don't develop that rapport with the producers, with the director, with the casting person that you were in the room with. Now you're just a video to them. Yeah. So I think it's harder starting out. I feel bad for kids starting out now.
Well, Morgan, thank you so much. I have enjoyed talking to you, meeting you virtually. This has been a wonderful show. Thank you for coming on the show with me.
Well, I appreciate it. And I know we've been online friends for a long time, but it's really nice to meet you virtually in person here.
It is. Well, we will see you next time on the show.
Goodbye.